Don't just live for tomorrow, or just live in yesterday. Just be glad for all you have that's in today.
Hey everyone, Connie here, and welcome to my blind reaction to episode 7 of Doom Patrol. So, first off, sorry for the lighting here. It's really overcast today. It's supposed to rain, so it's actually like only 10:50 in the morning. It's not late when I'm recording this, surprisingly. Um, but yeah, that's why it's so dark. Um, just natural lighting, always fickle. That being said, so this series is getting very deep and very emotional. It's touching on a lot of heavy topics such as mental illness, and I'm really interested to see where it goes because most of this seems to be like it seems to both be an ongoing narrative and episode of the week kind of structure. Like each episode seems to be either, well, each episode or two, because some of them are like a two-parter pretty much, seems to be its own kind of separate story, its own kind of separate thing that the characters are having to deal with. But at the same time, there is an ongoing narrative in the search for Niles, the the fight against Mr. Nobody, stuff like that. And it's like, plus with all the character developments and growths and everything, it combines both of those in a really unique, interesting way. And other shows have done that, but just the way that Doom Patrol is really interesting. And I think it's a smart idea because it allows them to explore all these different concepts with the kind of episode of or the plot of the week episodes, whatever you want to call it. It allows them to explore a lot of different concepts, a lot of different ideas, but at the same time, by tying them kind of all together and having that ongoing narrative, threading it through, it allows it to also keep interest. Because, at least for me, because I'll be honest, um, the entire structure a lot of shows have with the monster of the week, episode of the week, plot of the week, you get the general idea. A lot of shows like that, I feel like aren't as entertaining as they used to be. Those kind of shows used to be, honestly, in a lot of cases, what there was. Each episode of the show would be its own segregated plot, and not even just for animation, but for live action stuff too. You watch stuff like Fresh Prince of Bel Air, and it's like, yeah, each episode was its own thing. There might have been little kernels of continuity in there, but each episode was very much its own story, its own plot, its own specific issue to deal with, or specific moments and ideas and plot points. And back in the day and stuff, it's like those kind of things worked really well. But maybe it's because of things changing with people's interests, whether it be attention spans or just wanting more out of shows, wanting more like actual, like ongoing stuff. It just seems like it's become more and more to where these shows out there, the ones that are getting more popular, are the ones that are giving these ongoing narratives. Think about it, stuff like Breaking Bad or The Walking Dead or Game of Thrones or whatnot, prior to, the finale that a lot of people say ruined it. But the point is, these shows became so popular and they have this ongoing narrative. They have all these different storylines, sure. And some episodes may focus on one storyline over another, but they still have ongoing plot points, ongoing narratives, ongoing stories that they're telling, rather than having an episode of the week structure. And these are the shows that are becoming more and more popular in the current day. And there are still plenty of shows out there that have, excuse me, that have a very episodic nature to them, and they still do well enough. But you can see more and more that the shows with the ongoing narrative are becoming more popular and are becoming the ones that really reach those heights for TV shows nowadays. So, the idea of trying to combine both of them is smart because you're getting the creativity, the uniqueness, and the ability to explore with the episodic nature. But like I said, you're also getting the strong connective plot points with the ongoing narrative. It does both, and in this case, in this show's case, it does it very well. Um, and it's fine if a show chooses to go only one of those routes instead of trying to combine them. But I do like seeing this example. But moving away from that ramble, um, let us talk now about um, just the content. So the big thing that last episode left us off on was after helping Cyborg deal with his worries about how his father was going to mess with his programming and stuff. After helping Cyborg with that, Cliff was given some help in return. Cyborg helped him, basically, I guess you could say, catfish his daughter, which sounds really wrong and weird, but there's it's such a unique circumstance. But basically, he helps Cliff create this profile on the equivalent of Facebook. And he hacks it so that Cliff is automatically on her friends list so that she doesn't have to manually accept him. Now, of course, the profile is using a fake name and identities just so she doesn't know and everything. But Cliff is now able to basically stalk his own daughter. And they mentioned in the episode, they specifically said, Cyborg specifically said, like, that he's catfishing her, but it's not really the case. That's not really what catfishing is. Because catfishing is like pretending to be someone else, like, in order to have people like set up dates with you and stuff. It's used like in dating services and whatnot. Um, it's a term that comes from like when people pretend to be someone else in order to lure you in, basically. And I mean, I guess it could be used here because it's been used in a few different ways. As long as the idea is still that you're pretending to be someone else in order to, in a sense, trick someone, I guess it still counts. Because there's this show on Netflix. There's actually a version in uh, there's actually a version in French, and I think it's a Brazilian version as well. But there's a few different versions. But it's called The Circle. It's a kind of a reality show, and part of it is that the people can go into the show either as themselves or as a catfish pretending to be someone else, because none of the contestants are meeting face to face. They're meeting like over like an online social media kind of situation. so they never see each other face to face, so they could easily pretend to be someone else. It'd take way too long to explain the entire thing about the show, but yeah, the gist is that some of the people go in catfishing. They pretend to be someone else in order to trick everyone else and try to use that to their advantage. Um, for example, there's in the current season, season two, that's for the U.S. one. There's this woman who's currently on who is she is catfishing as in sync member Lance Bass. And it's like you would think that like, oh, no one would ever believe that. But the funny thing is she knows how Lance Bass acts because she actually is an assistant to Lance Bass. Like legit. She's Lance's assistant in real life, so she's catfishing as him in the game. And it's kind of funny. um, but either way, either way, um, it's it's pretty interesting to see where this is going to go because we see at the end of last episode that Cliff's daughter is apparently referring to Cliff's old pit crew manager, the same guy who Cliff beat up. She's referring to him as her father. Now, of course, we understand what that means because her parents died. At least she believes both of them are dead. And so she would have had to have been adopted by someone, and having it be someone close to the family honestly makes sense if there's no one specifically in the family left to take care of her. So the idea that this pit crew manager was the one to take care of her isn't out of the question. It's not completely out of left field if he was a family friend. And yeah, after some point, it's been years and years, she would possibly start to look at him like a father. It's kind of just how things work. I can understand Cliff being angry though, because we saw Cliff was angry. He was definitely upset at her calling him that and at all the pictures she had with him and everything. I get it, but he's been out of her life for a long time. She's grown up most of her life at this point without him. The fact that she's moved on, even if it's with that guy who was implied to be sleeping with Cliff's wife, even even if, and he was cheating too, so it's not like he was innocent in that matter, but even if it's with him, you would think Cliff would be happy that she's happy and has lived a full life going on from that. But as we've seen with all the characters in this series, Cliff has issues. And I don't say that to be mean or rude and I definitely don't say that to like be like not discriminatory. That's the wrong word. That's the only thing that's popping into my mind. But I'm not trying to like be anything like that. I'm saying that specifically because it's true. All the characters in this series have issues, and it's not meant as an insult. It's meant as we want to see them get over them, and we want to see them work through them and become better because of it. It's a defining part of this series that all these characters have stuff they're going through. And I love that they're taking it, that the creators of the show clearly are taking it so seriously. They never treat it as if it's untouchable, and they also never treat it as if it's something to be looked down on. They very much see it as something that people go through and that they need to be helped through. Whether it be Jane and her, um, just the issues that come along with having a personality disorder like that, whether it be Cliff and his anger issues and his propensity to just lash out and not really think things through, or Rita and her honestly crippling self-doubt. Like she seems at points very self-centered and egotistical, but she is really struggling with self-doubt. After her accident and everything, after what caused her to become, in her eyes, a monster, she's, let's be honest, it's not just self-doubt, it's probably self-loathing. And that's why trying to help people has been so important to her. With the one kid, with her old acquaintances in the Doom Patrol. Helping people has become such a big deal to her because it helps her deal with her own issues. You have Cyborg, who's dealing with everything that happened to him, as well as his issues with his father. You have I always forget his name at points. Um, I cannot think of his name for the life of me right now. In the bandages with the glasses, I can't think of his name. I don't know why, but he's dealing with issues of having to share his body with this electrical thing, and on top of that, having to deal with everything that happened in his past with his family and his lover and everything. And so it's like all these characters have their issues, and that's part of the series. But all of them are taken seriously, and all of them are shown to be real issues that these characters are trying to overcome and are trying to work through and are becoming stronger because of it. And that's awesome. That's the right way to handle these kinds of things in a series. Because so many shows throughout the past and everything have treated these kind of mental and emotional issues as jokes, honestly. Or in a lot of cases, some have even treated them as like such a big deal that they almost kind of like over dramatize and really bring it just to ridiculous levels, to the point where it just feels like they're not really making fun of it per se, but like they're not understanding it. And they're treating it as if it's like this ridiculous thing rather than just a thing that people go through that is debilitating and hard, but needs to be understood and everything. I know what I mean. I hope you guys do. Um, but yeah, so I'm definitely interested to see where this goes. The stuff with Cliff is definitely the stuff I want to be focused on next, because after last episode's ending with him seeing all of that stuff with the pit crew manager and all, whose name I can't think of at the moment, even though Cliff was like shouting it at the end of the last episode. Um, yeah, it's just I think that's the stuff I want to know about the most right now. And it's not that the other characters' issues and whatnot are bad, and I definitely still want to know about them and still want to see them progress and everything. But I don't know. I just maybe it just feels like to me that Cliff's since the beginning of the series has not been explored as much as everyone else's. Like they've been working more on making on Cliff forming connections with the other characters and especially Jane. And his actual main story with his daughter and everything hasn't progressed much because of it. All the other characters have had a lot of progression and a lot of big moments. And I feel like it's about time we get to Cliff again. That's my hope, at least. Um, I very much want to see what more they can do with him. And yeah, I like seeing his relationship with Jane change and grow over the episodes, but I want to see his relationship with his daughter touched on again. And eventually, I do want to see them reunite. And not just as like them coming across each other and her not knowing it's him because he's this robot man now. No, I want to see them like actually reunite, actually come face to face, knowing who each other are and connecting. And whether she even believes it or not at first, I think it could lead to a very big episode and some big growth for Cliff. So that would be kind of what I really would love to see. But I've been talking a long time in these pre-thoughts. These are some long pre-thoughts. So we're just gonna get on with it. I've kind of rambled on about a few things. Um, so when the screen fades to black, pause this redirect and go to the description below. Follow the link to the reaction, and after you watch it, come back here to the redirect and resume play. Because after it fades black and then fades back in, everything from that point forward will be my afterthoughts and will contain spoilers to the episode. So, that being said, thank you so much for tuning in, and I will see you at the reaction. And we are back, and we'll begin with spoilers in 3, 2, 1, now. That threw me off at the end. That's why I was messing up. See you back at the reaction. No, see you back at the redirect. um, but yeah, this I said with the last episode that this series continues to impress me. I noted that is like with how much it was touching on the mental illness and everything. And it was really, really impressing me. And it did the same with this episode. This episode was all about that. All about our characters airing their dirty laundry, you could say. So the episode is split into two distinct sections. First, there's this portion where we get to see each of the different characters in their struggles. We get to see a main source of the struggle, and then the current day, and them dealing with it. We see Rita as a young girl when she first met her idol, the actress who inspired her to become one, who, as we saw, was also kind of a bitch outside of the public light. And we find out, and we find out for sure, we get full confirmation that Rita Farr was a stage name. We don't know her real name. And I think at this point, I don't even think Rita truly knows who she is outside of being Rita Farr. We see in the current day, she ends up falling through a grate and landing in the God, what's it called? My mind is blanking. My mind's blanking. But she ends up going through the grate and everything, and she's crying out for help. No one can hear her, and she has to crawl her way out. Has to like force herself to get back to a place of physicality through mentality, and it's like we're seeing how hard it is for her to the point where it's like she can't even fully get back to that place. We see Larry, how when he was a kid, his parents got angry and upset and being just horribly shitty over even just the idea that he was gay. And the thing is, in the 30s, it's like, yeah, like the mother said, they could lose everything, and it's true. And it was that horrible and that disgusting and that wrong back in that time. Queer people throughout history have been looked down upon or seen as evil or bad, and it's really hard to watch, to see that kind of shit. And it affected him going into his life. But I'll get more into that later. So we then see current day. He's trying to talk with the spirit by letting it show him stuff while he sleeps. And it goes back to a day of one of his biggest regrets in regards to his relationship with John. And we see that the spirit clearly is like trying to get him to open up by purposefully showing the wrong stuff or the wrong details and all. And eventually, Larry does open up. And he does finally admit things. We see Jane is struggling with what she found out about Niles possibly putting her in that home. She sees him as having betrayed her. And all of her personalities are kind of freaking out about it. She's having a breakdown. And we see in the past that she came from a home where with a parent who was very dismissive of her and just ignored her when she was crying and stuff. And it's like we still don't know the full details behind what caused the personalities, but we're starting to get there. We're starting to see her struggles more and more. And with Vic, we see just a moment from his childhood, a moment where him and his mother just showed great love for each other, and just it was a nice moment, all things considered, even if he was getting his dislocated shoulder popped back in. But that comes into play with what he did and his guilt towards all of that. And we see in the current day, he's dealing with his humanity. He finds out that he had this like dating profile he made when he was younger, and it had, ever since his accident, all of the information had been hidden from him by his father. And now he's going through all of these profiles to try and work back with it, but most of these people are just most of these girls are just trying to get with him because he's cyborg. And then the one who doesn't, he ends up finding out he has like a spy cam that is able to watch her completely unintentionally based on just his systems and everything. And he tests her basically. He sends her a photo, a current photo with the mechanical parts and everything showing, and he sees her like make this kind of horrified, disgusted face, and it's like he it really bothers him, and it's valid. And then we find out what happened with Cliff. So we see when Cliff was a kid, he had a horribly abusive father. We don't know how far it went, but we heard how his father and mother were talking, how horribly abusive and toxic and everything it was. And then in the current day, he's dealing with the news about his daughter being kind of adopted in by Bump, and he's not really handling it well. He goes, he does what he thinks is confronting Bump. He believes he's going off to find him, and in reality, he hasn't actually gone anywhere. Something is messing with his circuits, his body, and he's seeing Bump when he's actually talking to Vic, and he's hearing like things that Bump is supposedly saying and fucking with him, and it's horrible. And at first I thought it was really happening, because at first there was not really any indication that it was fake, but then once once things started lining up, it's like, oh, that's what we saw he said to Vic and everything. And it's like, oh, okay, something's wrong. And so they then mainly Cliff decides that they should have a therapy session. They should talk and think things through. And they do. They tell each other everything. They open up about their issues, dealing with everything they've had to deal with even before everything happened. Cliff opens up about everything happening with his daughter and all. Larry opens up with his homosexuality, Rita with her feelings regarding what she had done in the past, and Vic with his guilt about killing his mother. And it kind of breaks down in the end with Jane showing the picture she painted, what she was shown, and everyone kind of, well, Jane and Cliff both say things to each other that they didn't really mean, and shit just not going well. And we find out that Cliff had been controlled by Admiral Whiskers. Or maybe not fully controlled, but at least messed with enough. So, back 6 episodes ago, when they were taking the van out, which was the first episode, when they were taking the van out to the town, they ended up hitting a rat. The rat's baby ended up getting manipulated by Mr. Nobody. Because why the fuck not? And now, all this time later, Admiral Whiskers, as he's calling himself, is getting revenge using a Princess Bride line. And we see Admiral Whiskers go inside Cliff and find out, like, yeah, that's how everything happened. It's like, we don't know all the details about, like, what he was doing to Cliff. All we know is that Admiral Whiskers was fucking with him somehow to cause him to say and do things, excuse me, that he didn't really want to do. And it kind of sheds just his actions and words and ideas in this episode in a new light. And you kind of wonder how much of that was actually Cliff or not. And that's the thing, like, we know, it even mentioned in this episode, that Mr. Nobody is trying to pull them apart like he did with the Doom Patrol. Like, they straight up reference that in this episode. And this therapy session was them trying to avoid that, but it did not work in the end. And Jane seems to be running away, which is very bad, all things considered. So this kind of took a turn for the worst. But we got a lot of big stuff, a lot of big discussion in regards to all of this. We got to learn more about how our characters are feeling about themselves and everything going on around them. And it's really wild, and hopefully they're able to get through this. Like last episode, touched a lot on a lot of mental issues, and it's very clear. Like, I talked about it last time, but it's like, yeah, this series going into, it's like you think it's just going to be like this comical, goofy take on superheroes and stuff, but it gets very serious, and a lot of that was very serious. And I'm definitely interested to see where all of this goes in terms of their dealing with their own issues, as well as working to help each other. Because they noted how just talking to each other like this was an important thing. They acknowledged that. And so there's a lot of opportunity to make this work going forward. But tell me in the comments below, what did you think of this episode of Doom Patrol? Thank you all so much for tuning in, and for now, I'm Connie and I'm signing off. See y'all next time.